And welcome everybody to the Sports Desk. I'm Scott Galetti along with Ed Nunez. We have a special guest today. We're going to be talking championship football this Saturday night at 7 o'clock, Tingley Coliseum. It will be the Duke City Gladiators taking on the Salina Liberty. And Aldney Awani, of course, our fine producer-director. And Ed, first off, been a couple of weeks. What's been going on with you?
Well, yes, I don't want the viewers to understand that you and I didn't call and talk about
No,
the
we
shirts.
didn't coordinate.
It does, yeah.
Also forgot my coat, so that's a problem.
But it's great to have Coach Bramante here. I'm looking forward to talking to. They've had a great season, 10-3, championship Saturday. They're defending their championship from last year. I don't know if you had a chance to see the championship rings that they got from last year. They're amazing. And so anytime you defend a championship, it's special. It's here at Tingley Coliseum, so it's great to have Coach Bramante on to talk with us about that.
And speaking of Coach Bramante, he's the head coach of the Duke City Gladiators, Dominic I can't even talk today. Dominic Bramante. Yeah.
One of these days, I guess if we win another championship, you'll get the name right.
Hey, I'm a little. Dominic today. I'm a little. Bramante, right?
I'm a little upset, fellas. I didn't get the memo of the color coordination, and so I feel like a sore thumb. You know, I stick out like a sore thumb right now.
But that logo right there, that's what I want. That is the shirt to have. And, you know, let's talk about this. And I also have a graphic that we put together, and I think Alden might have some stuff from previous games and getting ready for the game this Saturday, because you'll be able to see it on Proview Networks, Comcast 26, right here. But let's talk about from ground up. You know, it's amazing from the first press conference that you guys had a few years back, didn't have a field, didn't have this, didn't have that, to now. What's it been like for you, the ups and downs, to get to this point, going for your second straight championship?
Wow, we're going to go there. That's serious of a question here on the Sports
I'm not going to
Desk.
copy what Steve Davis asked you.
I came up here to cut up, man, you know, to have some fun.
I'm not going to copy what Steve Davis asked you.
It's been a journey that we can write a book about.
We ask our own questions here, right?
Hey.
I remember our very first press conference that you were at. I think you would just happen to be walking by that day, and you walked in.
I got the memo to be there.
And you walked in, and so I can remember saying, "Who is this guy?" But we said then is that I think it was Van Tate that asked the first question, Coach, how do you expect to get people at your games? And I said, you have to win.
Yep.
And he had asked me a question about winning, and I remember saying it's a process. Winning is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. And lo and behold, we've been just blessed to have some, my coaches who have been with me for years, and a great group of players year in and year out, where we were able to set the culture. And the amazing thing is, in our history, we've never had a losing season. The last couple of years, the winning has been unprecedented, the winning that we have. And it takes so many different factors to do that. Ownership, great coaches, great players, everybody being on the same page and buying into the culture. And as each year went by, we were able to get better talent, bigger. And the program's in place now. And so we have an extremely big challenge in front of us this Saturday. A hungry team, the Salina Liberty. They can see the brass ring. They want the brass ring, just like we did last year.
Right.
They got to go through us, though, to get it.
I think all the things that you said are true, Coach, and it started from, I covered the Gladiators for FamousHipHopRadio.com a couple years ago, and I really enjoyed that. I got to go to Amarillo on a couple of road trips, and Amarillo, you slayed the Dragon there, and they're a big rival of yours, and I know how close you said you and Nate Davis, the Amarillo quarterback, are. You have a pretty good relationship.
To this day.
That's always a good game, a great game. I remember going up there and, in covering that game, and I think Donovan Portery threw a late interception. Donnie Duncan killed the Gladiators that night. He's on your roster now. But I remember Donnie Duncan had, I think, 4 interceptions that year of Donovan Portery, the former Lobo. Now he's with you. Your defense, you mentioned that. Defensively, Fatu Olale, Brent Bowers, Jason Serta. You allow league low rush per carry, I believe. And so the defense has been outstanding. Robert Kent, the pickup quarterback from the Texas Revolution. To explain a little bit how much he's meant to you, because it's a heck of a pickup. You know, Donovan Portery moved on, and you got Robert Kent. And talk about Robert Kent a little bit.
Well, we built our program. There was a science to what we did. We took actually Bill Parcells handed the way to develop a team to Bill Belichick, and we kind of built our team through the Belichick model. And the Belichick model is have a dominant player on your front line of defense, your defensive line. We have Fatu Olale and Brett Bowers. Have a dominant player on your second level of defense. We have that with Jason Serta. And then have a dominant player on your third level of defense. We have that with Freddie Griggs. And then you feed around them, okay? And so if you look at our team, how it's built, we talked about the dominant levels on every layer on the defense. We have a dominant player on the first level of offense in Sherman Carter, who's one of the best centers in America. We have a dominant player on the second level of defense, i.e. Robert Kent. We have a dominant player on the third level of the offense, Romello Brown, Justin Kelly. And then let's go to our receivers. We have a dominant player there with Dello Davis, Cedric Johnson. So we built this team strategically to withstand competition. And the Belichick method, who can say it doesn't work? And to the point where it's working on our level now in what we do. Now, Robert Kent, that was a big decision of ours. You know, we had brought Donovan back this year. And so when the situation where we were able to draft Robert, you know, came around, we had a big decision because Donovan Portery is a good quarterback, UNM legend, local guy, but, you know, something just wasn't firing on all cylinders. You know, that myself and my coaches, you know, we just weren't comfortable where we were offensively. Well, the head coach is paid to do one thing. The head coach is paid to make decisions. And those decisions aren't easy decisions. Anybody can make an easy decision. So midway, we decided to draft Robert Kent in a dispersal draft and go in a completely different direction. And was it the right decision? Well, we're going to see Saturday night. We've been undefeated since Robert Kent's been here. We've got on a run.
6-0.
6-0 with Robert Kent. Yep.
Let's take a look at the game coming up here. Actually, let's go ahead and step aside and take a break, and then we'll get to that so we can have a longer segment coming around the break. We'll take a break here on the Sports Desk, but first, the top 10 plays of the week.
Romello will dance in for the touchdown.
What an excellent play call by the offensive coordinator there. That was a great.
Jackson up the middle. Open receiver. The two in motion. Jackson going to the end zone to Pargo. Touchdown, Rashad Pargo. Back to throw again, and it's Griggs! Freddie's been everywhere as he just took flight like Superman, and Griggs is still on his feet, and he's got one guy to beat, and it was the quarterback.
First half, but in the second half, they have made plays when they needed to, kept the ball moving, kept the chains moving.
Brooks gets free. He's going to have to beat the kicker. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. Touchdown, Salina. Handoff to Justin Kelly. A lot of room up the middle for Kelly. He's still on his feet, and he is in. Touchdown, Justin. They just get it off to Kelly, still on his feet. Santa Maria. He spins in for the touchdown.
Your way in a championship run, and the Gladiators know that more than anybody.
Kent has some time. Rolling to his right. Cedric Johnson makes the catch.
Fantastic catch.
Block. Hand off to Romello Brown. Romello still on his feet. Romello is looking for the end zone, and he's got it. Touchdown, Gladiators. There's your dagger.
Welcome back here to the Sports Desk. Scott Galetti along with Ed Nunez, joined by Dominic Bramante, the head coach of the Duke City Gladiators. And we were talking about the quarterback situation with you, and it's a good situation to have because you have a couple of outstanding quarterbacks. Let's take a look at the matchup here coming up, Coach, and we'll see exactly how good the quarterback that you took a chance on is. 1,651 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 2 picks.
There's no doubt Robert Kent is one of the best in the business. That's the reason why we selected him. He's a veteran, true professional, true leader. The great thing about Robert, you guys, and I'll give you a little fact about Robert, he's 38 years old, Robert. And so he's been doing this for a long time. I competed against Robert way back in 2006 when I was with the Tennessee Valley Vipers and he was with the Birmingham Stallions in the Arena Football League. And so, you know, it's been a joy to have Robert this year. He's really brought in a new culture for the offense. And him and Landrick Brody, who are a UNM legend, who's my offensive coordinator, have worked really, really well together. And I'm really excited. As you can see, Andrew Jackson for the Salina Liberty, another former Texas Revolution quarterback. He was the quarterback for them last season when we beat them in the conference championship. So Andrew Jackson's coming here with a chip on his shoulder because we prevented him from going to the championship last year and possibly getting a ring. Now that he's a step closer and now he's in a championship game, he's got to go through Albuquerque's Duke City Gladiators to get that so-said ring. And so we're going to do our very best to make sure he doesn't get a ring.
52 touchdowns, 12 picks, but that means he throws a good number of times. And then you got Tracy Brooks, who you and I talked about a little bit during the break. And this guy, I mean, look at his numbers, 754 yards, 24 TDs.
Tracy Brooks is who we have to stop. He's their number one weapon. And then, you know, you go to their receivers, you know, Rashad Pargo, Daniel McKinney. They've got some weapons on their side. I've compared them in interviews this week to the Duke City Gladiators. This team is built almost like the way we're built. And so that's how good of a game it's going to be this week. But that's the reason why we play the games, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, playing them the last regular season game of the year reminds me of the 2007 New York Giants when the last game of their regular season, they played a 15-0 New England Patriot team.
Right.
In the last game of the regular season, the Patriots wanted to be, you know, the second team to finish the regular season undefeated, and then lo and behold, a month later, the Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl and upset them. So who knew, you know, that the last regular season game was going to be a championship game prelude?
Salina beat Duke City in Salina, Kansas on May the 4th. And Duke City comes back, beats Salina in Albuquerque on June 22nd, 43-26. What do you think of Salina, Kansas, by the way?
I think you know, the good town.
I've been
the
there.
May 4th game, let me tell you, the Duke City Gladiators, we led that game for 59 minutes and 44 seconds. We were ahead in that game. It was a low-scoring game. We gave up the go-ahead score with 16 seconds to go in the game. And they came back.
That sounds like an Amarillo game.
It was a tough game. Then the game we had a couple of weeks ago, obviously that was a tough game. That was a 9-6 halftime lead, but we prevailed in the second half. So we have not. So the May 4th, we don't look at it like, you know, we got beat.
Right.
We lost that game. We lost that May 4th game.
And you've been playing that way ever since.
Ever since that's our last loss.
Talk
that
about a
May
chip
4th
on the
game.
shoulder.
There's
You've been
no
playing
doubt.
with a chip on the shoulder, and you've talked about that numerous times.
Yes. I mean, that was at the time our third loss in a row. We had a long road streak. We were on the road for a month straight. Every game we were in, we beat ourselves every game, but that was the game that we really had to take a look at ourselves and say where are changes needed. And a week later, Robert Kent presented himself. And so we've been on a run ever since. Now we're one, it's all for naught if we can't win on Saturday. It's all for naught. You know, on a professional level, there's no second place, no second prize. You know, if we lose Saturday night, we go back in a pot with every other team in the league. No one remembers who lost the championship, who lost the Super Bowl 3 years ago. You know, no one remembers those things. And so this is our third championship, my third here in Albuquerque in my sixth season. We're 1-1 in championship games. And so we've got to win this one.
You know, I look at it too. I think you're right. Now, I've lived in Albuquerque all my life, Coach, and we've seen minor league teams come and go. I've seen plenty of them come and go. Duke/Isotopes have been the survivor here. United, New Mexico United has certainly taken the city by storm. But I also, you know, you did mention that, and I know you're a coach, and you have to look at that. Is the glass half empty or half full? And what if? I get it. I've coached. I understand that. I've been around a lot of teams. But when, and you also can say, you know, Duke City back-to-back championships. I mean, what would that mean for the city and for the franchise? You got new ownership this year. Well, you know, was it last year? Gina came in. Was it last year?
Yeah, this year. She came in January.
So you got new ownership, and you know, if you did pull that off, and again, you're on a good roll here. And I want to ask you another question, follow-up question after this. But what would that mean for the Duke City Gladiators, the franchise, the ownership, back-to-back championships?
It's humbling, number one, to be the number one seed the second year in a row in this league, which we qualified. It's humbling, number two, to be the conference regular season and overall conference champions 2 years in a row. Check off that box. To have the opportunity to repeat as champions, it's almost, you know, too good to be true to say, hey, here in Albuquerque, in New Mexico, with the culture that they have in football here, which, you know, when I got here 6 years ago, I wasn't too very happy with the culture of football in the state of New Mexico. And so that has really been tough. You know,
Neither
Coach
was the state
Davey,
of New Mexico.
Coach Davey, if you need any help in recruiting and any recruiting tips, give me a call, buddy. You could see that we've brought Power 5 players over the last few years to come play for the Duke City Gladiators. The best players will come to Albuquerque. Coach, I'll help you. Don't worry about it. You just reach out. I'll help you, Coach. You know, we've had players from all 5 power conferences come to Albuquerque and play football. You can't win championships without great players. And so we're lucky. What would it mean? There's no words that could express what it would mean. You know, last year when we won it, you know, was such a magical year that my first reaction when the game sounded and the gun went off was relief. Wow, we closed the deal. You know, that was my first reaction. And now this year, you know, afterwards, and I thought about it in the offseason saying, man, if I ever get back there again, I'm going to try to enjoy it this time. You know, but these are so rare, you know, to get to a championship game in any sport on this level is so rare that words can't explain what it means. I think our crowd deserves it. I think we're either number 1 or number 2 in attendance in the league. They deserve it. Their passion when it comes to the Duke City Gladiators, the ninth man that I like to call them. We know the city forefathers, our city leaders love the success of the Duke City Gladiators. And from a football standpoint, we hope that every high school football team dreams that they can have the same success. Our college teams dream that they can have the same success because their success is synonymous with our success. Right. We really are at a precipice in history of showing the rest of the states that, hey man, we got pretty good football here in New Mexico too. And that's, that's what it means.
Dominic Bramante, our guest here, the head coach of the Duke City Gladiators. You mentioned the ninth man, and I want to bring this up because we've seen the growth from day one to now in attendance. One thing that hasn't really grown, except for numbers, is the enthusiasm, because even when you had crowds of 12, 1,500, 2,000, they're engaged from the first play of the game to the last play of the game. And to me, it's amazing because they don't just show up and say, oh, what's going on? Once you go to an arena football game, you're into it.
I think
otherwise, you don't like football because
you don't even have to like football.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you don't even have to like football. But
it's a great game.
I think that's a credit to Albuquerque because when you go to the United game, okay, and I don't want to be offensive towards anybody. I can't get into that game. I just can't get into not the United game, that round ball game that they kick around and stuff like that. I think what the United have done is amazing, and I watch the crowd because they get in. There's more action going on in the crowd than there is on the field in that game, for crying out loud. And I think that's what Albuquerque's about. We're passionate people, and you notice I say now I'm an Albuquerquean now, you know. We're passionate people.
I think you've been an Albuquerquean for a while, actually.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. We love what we do. We're hardworking, and so we demand the best.
Right.
And that's where we're at. That's what our fan base is at. I love to see, when I meet people in pregame, man, I tell them, when I see you after the game, I hope you're hoarse. You know, because now you got people who are dressing in helmets and, it's similar to, we were doing it before the United were doing it.
Well, that's what I'm
fan
saying.
base, the fan base.
But the thing is, you told Steve Davis on the Steve Davis show a couple of weeks ago that you don't notice it during the game, but when you watch the highlights, then you see it. Well, he and I are there, and I know Ed will attest. I mean, since day one, the fans, the numbers is what needed to grow, which has had, but the enthusiasm has been there since day one.
It really has, and that's a testament to arena football because, the level of talent. I think a lot of people that have a football background that experience arena football for the first time, when they go to a Gladiator game, they're shocked at the level of talent, because when we first, hit the scene, one of my biggest monikers was, we're not semi-pro football. This is not semi-pro players. And that's nothing against semi-pro football or players. Love those guys. But those guys show up once a week.
Right.
Our guys work all year round.
Right.
We practice every day. They're in film every day. There's no free lunches here. And we had to overcome that moniker that people wanted to associate us with, semi-pro. And we've kind of broken from that. And now people that come to us know that you're not only going to see great football, you're going to see great football players.
Well, and I'll let Ed get in here, but you've had players, and other teams have had players that have been in the Canadian Football League and have had a cup of coffee in the NFL and even beyond a cup of coffee.
Right.
So I mean, the players are, speak for themselves.
There's no doubt. Robert Kent played in the CFL. Freddie Griggs played in the CFL. Duke Robinson played in the NFL. Sherman Carter played in the NFL. We've got players that are talented. If anybody doesn't know in Albuquerque who Jason Serta is, I don't know where you've been. You might be living under a rock if you don't know who Jason Serta is. But we've got the best of the best, and that's one of the reasons why we have the success that we do. We're very proud of our success, nor do we take it for granted either. We know that we've got to keep working. We've got to keep, getting after it. We've got to stay humble in what we do. And, we've got to all buy into the culture of, what we've set and keep it going. This is not we don't just expect this year. We expect to do it next year and a year after and a year after.
I think one of the things, too, is talk a little bit about the Arena League itself, because you're right there. Okay, you got explosive players making plays in constricted areas, which I always thought was great. You're right there. When I covered the game, Scott covered them, Sebastian Noel covers them now. You're right there next to the bench, right? The Amarillo bench, you'd be right there. And
we have players and balls flying right in front of
right,
us.
so
it's awesome.
you better have your head on a swivel, be ready. But some of the things the players would say, you're like, okay, I hope that didn't make it on the mic, and that's okay. It's part of the game. But I think what I want to say also is, you mentioned the ninth man, and I got to just give out a shout out to at least Vernon Kuntz, the DJ, who does a great job of getting the crowd involved. And I know you've got
Right.
some other on the field people, but I remember Vernon real well because when I covered for Famous Hip Hop Radio, I mean, I just think of Vernon. He just gets the crowd so into it. He does a great job. You've got great on the field people that get the crowd involved. And you did mention now you're seeing the jerseys, the helmets, an identity, a winning identity. And Coach, you and I both know that makes a huge difference. And so people want to see, Scott says this all the time to me, people want to see people win championships.
Right, and you're exactly right, Ed. We have championship game ops. We have championship office people. We have championships don't just happen. There's a lot of people that get into work. And you're right, Vernon. I don't notice him during a game, but so many people have come up to me and said, "Man, Vernon, rock and roll, gets that place jumping in between plays and stuff like that." And he's a wonderful human being to boot. And so. It's an atmosphere when you come to a football game. You're not just going to see a football game. You're going to see our DJs, and Vernon, and you're going to see our game ops peoples with the games that go on during a game and everything. Our bouncy houses for the kids. It's an event. Each game day is an event. You can go at 3:30, 4 o'clock, hit the the pregame tailgate party. We see Scott out there all the time because food is for free, and everybody knows Scott. Scott loves the freebie.
Oh,
and
man.
and
Holy
also
cow.
too, just to say, you're talking about how close you are. You hear all the stuff in the visitors, the foul language, the fighting, you got to avoid those footballs. Listen, let's be honest. Now we know Sebastian ain't avoiding no football now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it'll hit him right between the eye because we know he. Not exactly fleet of foot, Sebastian.
I don't know who is, though, at those footballs coming at that speed, to be fair to him and all of us. You got another job to do, but you're right. They're right there. And I think the thing that I love when I covered was just the hitting the wall. Boom. The plays that they made in constricted space, the explosive plays. One thing I want to ask you about, and you mentioned this, is Sherman Carter, the anchor on your offensive line. You said one of the best centers in America, number 66, I believe. 60. Okay, how important, and has he been, and you mentioned anchors. You mentioned Brett Bowers. You mentioned Fatu Alale, Jason Serta. You mentioned anchors. How important has it been to have Sherman Carter here for the last 4 years to be your offensive line anchor? How important has that been?
The most important. You couldn't put into words how important that is, especially with the type of person he is. He's a probation officer here in town. And he's a man's man, but he's a gentleman. He's great people. He's one of the people that get it. When I say get it, I'm talking about life. Sherman gets it. And so he's a true leader on that unit. On that whole offensive side of the ball, he's a voice of reason. And so it's been a blessing to have Sherman in the Gladiator life on our team the last 3 years, and a blessing for me to know him on a personal level.
Speaking of a blessing, we have Dominic Bramante from the Duke City Gladiators. We'll talk with him more out of the break here on the Sports Desk. And we're back here on the Sports Desk. Scott Galetti and Ed Nunez, welcome back to the Sports Desk. Been a couple of weeks since we had a show. Alden Iowani is our fine director, doing a great job as he got things straight here. And Dominic Bramante, the head coach of the Duke City Gladiators. Let's look at the screen one more time. Look at the game coming up. This won't be the last time we look at it, but we'll look at it right now. 7 o'clock at Tingley Coliseum. The season series is tied at 1 game apiece, and there are the particulars. Robert Kent doing a great job along with Dello Davis, the glue on the offense, fine wide receiver. The Gladiators 10-3, Salina 9-4. And what can you tell the fans about coming out?
Come on out. Whenever what an opportunity to come out and witness a championship game. And when you come out and it's a home game and your team's playing for a championship, teams that play at home there's high percentages of good things happening. Come out and, Lord knows if we can win, it's going to be a hell of a celebration.
The one thing that you've learned, and not learned, you actually told us, being at home's not a guarantee,
No.
and you've been on both ends of it.
You know, when it comes down to one game, no one has the advantage. It's always going to come down to who makes the least amount of mistakes. And you can, you know, no matter if you're playing in a parking lot, it ain't going to make a difference. And
Right.
so, you know, the one thing that I could say, the ninth man, we do feel, the players do feel, ride off that emotion. So that's a huge advantage. So, you know, ninth men that are out there, women, kids, come on out. We need you Saturday night.
I got to say this, Coach. I think you must feel good about where you're at, 6 in a row. But I understand you got to get the job done. The final piece, you know, the final hurdle. I understand that. But I've got to ask you this. Robert Kent, you know, you got him in the dispersal. And I wanted to know, how did that work? Because you're the defending champs from last year. Were you the first pick in that dispersal draft? Because getting
No.
Robert Kent was a heck of a boon for your team. So how did that work?
We picked 5th in that draft. And I think that the 4 teams before us obviously felt they had their quarterback. We were blessed. We were worried that 1 or 2 of them were going to pick him. He fell to us. Not only did he fall to him, but fall to us in his second round, his number 1 receiver fell to us. So we got him and his number 1 receiver at the time. And so there was already a rhythm between those two. And it really has helped us. Clifton Rhodes is his name. And so, yeah, Robert Kent is a pro's pro. And you want to see a professional quarterback, come on out and watch Robert Kent.
When you saw the draft going the way it was, were you a little nervous? Did you think, oh, shoot, somebody might get him? Or were you pretty comfortable with where you were drafting that you'd have a chance
There
to get
was
him?
one team that we thought that would get him. And then once we got him, we were hoping to say, now, let's hope those other teams didn't do their homework and allow us to get Clifton Rhodes as number 1 receiver. That was really what my worry was once we got Robert Kent, was that someone was going to say, we're not going to give him his number 1 receiver, and yet he fell to us in the second round. So, yeah, I mean, whenever there's a player of Robert Kent's ability available, you want him. And so it was a great draft night for us that night.
Well, let me just get one more in, if you don't mind. It's a big change, I think, because it's trust, right? It's trust. You know who he is. You know he's a good pickup. But you coming in with a new system. You know, he's got to learn that. He's a pro's pro. That's probably not a problem. But it's a huge change. It really is. And I think one of the things you said, that's why you're the head coach. You're hired to make those tough decisions.
Right.
I'm sure you and your staff picked apart the film and they really thought about it, because it paid off. Now, if it hadn't, it could be the other way, right? But
Well,
6
there's
straight
no
wins,
doubt.
and it's gone great.
It's gone great so far. Let's see if we need one more. We got one more hill to climb, and then it was the best decision in the world.
Got it.
Before you came on here with us, you were talking about wanting to talk other things. What do you want to talk about, Coach?
Pete Alonso won the home run derby last night. My New
How
York
about
Met.
that, huh?
My New York Met. Even though he finished 25 home runs behind the Guerrero kid and stuff like that. Hey, I'm a sports fan. There's no doubt. You know, with all the movement in the NBA that's been going on, I think that's been exciting. UNM football's coming up. New Mexico high school football's coming up. There's a lot of things I'd love to discuss and do. You know, how do you think UNM football is going to do this year?
You know what? I think this. You know, they've had back-to-back 3-9 seasons, and I think they got a lot of junior college players. I think he's got to make a decision at quarterback. Is it Tabaka Tolodi? And you know, the other guy, apparently the Tennessee guy, I can't remember. Sharon Jones. But I think he needs. Tuiotti's a good quarterback, in my opinion. I had Ned James on here about 2 months ago. Now, Tuiotti has not been able to finish any season. Okay. Now, when you're going to run that kind of offense, you're susceptible to getting hit. He's going to get hit. I don't know if he's going to be the starter to last the season, but I think those are a lot of the things that I'm kind of thinking about, you know,
Right.
going into the season.
Right.
So, anyway, Coach will be joining us right here in a second again. But I think, you know, he certainly set the table well for the championship this Saturday. Any championship you get excited about, I don't care what it's in. It's in Albuquerque.
Right.
Right. Now, you haven't seen a whole bunch of Gladiator games. I've seen a few, not many, this year. But you saw them. You saw them a couple years ago.
Yep.
And so I'm excited.
I haven't seen them in person in a couple of years, but yeah, they're great games. I mean, you watch it on TV, you watch it on Proview. You know, the excitement is there. And that's the thing that, I mean, I remember a couple of years ago where you and I were both doing the game at the same time, and ironically against Amarillo, and you and I talked about the atmosphere after the game.
You know, I guess what I wasn't used to at first was just having the players from Amarillo right next to you, and they'll tell you how they've not you, the announcer,
Right.
they're talking to each other if they're
Right.
frustrated about a play, and but it's exciting. You know, and
The
then-
cool
yeah.
thing about that is I noticed they were very cognizant of the mics and the cameras being there, but they were still being players. And, you know, hey, when you're on the bench, that's your domain.
That's right.
So you talk the way you talk. And it was kind of neat seeing them kind of quietly, maybe a bad word blurts out, but they knew that they were there, and then they, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
and then they'd go like that. And it was, you don't see football players do that.
No, you don't.
I mean, go down to a outdoor football game and go to a bench, and you'll hear a lot of stuff. I did sideline for the Sun Bowl a couple of years ago, and you hear a lot of language.
You know what
I mean, that's the game of football. I mean, you work all week to play one game, and that one game is there, and boom, you're into it.
And I think one of the things I've been a fan of the NFL since '70. Cowboys are my team, right? And
You have my sympathies.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. But I got to tell you one thing, Coach. I saw them win 5. I saw 5.
Okay.
Okay, I may never see another one.
There you go.
It's like with the Lakers, right? People say they haven't made the playoffs in 6 years, but I saw them win 11. So, I've been lucky enough to, and I never say we. I'm not part of the team. I don't own stock. That's just teams that I follow. But I think, gosh, when you look at football and the preparation, and it's like you said, you mentioned Sherman Carter, a man's man. I mean, some of the hits that I've seen over the years, holy cow, wow.
These players, and that's,
Teeth chattering.
I think for the fan base, that ninth man, they really appreciate that these players, both teams, that our opponent coming in, they leave parts of them on the field. Without a doubt, they leave parts of them on the field. Skin, blood. No, when I'm not exaggerating, they give everything they've got to entertain the fan base. True gladiators, hence no pun intended. True gladiators, these players are. The injury rate of our players is 100%. 100% injury rate, which means if you play the game, you're getting injured. And yet these guys still play.
You're going to get hit. I think what it brings me back to a line in Any Given Sunday. James Woods. These men are gladiators. I don't know if you remember that. But Any Given Sunday was one heck of a football film. It really was.
That was a great football
film. It really was.
Film.
It's hard for me to see Pacino in that role. I like Pacino in other roles, but the locker room speech that he had, you'd do anything for that one.
Right,
you're like, oh man. So that was great. I thought that was a great football film.
I think what it really does, that film showed the price that these players pay physically. You talk about, from your cowboy years when you were watching the club win, those players are cripples now. Those players, you're older men now, older gentlemen that struggle. Our players know the risks. They know that when they get my age, they're going to walk around like me and do the things we do. But that's our life. That's what the game is about. That's what makes it exciting. Was that that's how many what bastions of society can call themselves true gladiators?
Right.
I'll tell you what, you mentioned that, and you're right. Because I've been a fan since '70, and I thought going back, and I'll YouTube some old games, and I remember watching Tom Landry. There was a discussion the other day. I'm a big Cowboy fan. I'm on Cowboy sites. Who was a better coach, Jimmy Johnson or Tom Landry? To me, it's not close. Tom Landry coached offense, defense, special teams. He coached the flex defense, which nobody could teach. Nobody. Now, not a great people person, right? He wasn't going to put his arm around you, nothing like that. But as far as football brilliance, that guy was one of the greatest coaches there ever was.
I think when you say that, you're absolutely correct with his innovations, with the things that he did on both sides of the ball. I think I saw a Tom Landry Football Life on the NFL Network.
Yes.
And what they said was, Tom Landry considered himself a New York Giant because he played with the Giants. He coached with the Giants, got his coaching,
pedigree,
chops, with
Vince
the New York
Lombardi
Giants.
was actually the
offensive coordinator.
Offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
Landry,
Tom was the defensive
Think
coordinator.
about that.
Jim Lee Howe was the head coach. Vince Lombardi was the offensive coordinator. Tom Landry. Now, when Lombardi went to Green Bay, he used Landry's defense. When Landry went to Dallas, he made up his own offense. He didn't go to Vince and go.
Multiple looks.
He went
motion.
made up his own offense
Yeah.
and things of that nature. So you're absolutely correct. And then I think when you're called God's coach, that's pretty powerful.
Right.
Did they call Tom Landry
They did.
God's coach?
They
I
did.
think that's pretty powerful.
They did. I think one of
Right.
the things that strikes me with him, and I watched, they had 20 straight winning seasons from 66 to 86, and people forget that. And now, as he aged, the game kind of, maybe it passed him by, maybe he didn't change with the game. But what I saw was just amazing. Now again, not a player's coach, always thinking about the next play. If you remember when they scored touchdowns, never celebrates. Looking at his playbook, at his chart, never. The unemotional, right? And they said this on the NFL channel. His system was without emotion and kind of cold.
Right.
And that struck me, man. I'm like, holy cow, they won, right? But it wasn't like, hey, right? It was like, hey, we won. Let's move on.
Well,
So-
there's that fine line between your relationship with your players. And as an emotional game that this is, and you want it to be an emotional game, taking a cue from the military leaders to the men, there's that wall between them because it's a business thing. And Coach Landry knew his way, and his way was successful. Funny thing, we were just talking. Our team chaplain is off on the sideline over there. His name is Mark Mulaney. And
Oh, you got it in. I was going to ask you to
first
get his
time
name
we
in
got
there.
it in this year, all year long. And
Exactly.
so hopefully he won't ask any more about getting his name in. But we were just talking today, and he had an audience. He was very lucky and had an audience with Tom Landry. Sat down and had a 3-hour conversation with Tom Landry.
Wow.
And so it's ironic that you bring up Coach Landry in this. And so the interesting question would be with Coach Landry, how good would he do today in today's athletes?
I think one of the things, I don't want to, you want to
No,
answer that?
go ahead.
Okay, I think
I was going to switch gears, so go ahead. And,
I think one of the
finish
things that
on
I look at, and I look at the sidelines, I watched the NFL channel. I watched that all weekend. My wife is going crazy because it's all Cowboys, right? Aikman, Romo, Landry, so my wife's like, I've had enough of the.
Well, she probably said this is a boring
No,
weekend.
she absolutely did. But I think if you look at Coach, what he wore on the sideline, the hat, the suit, right? Now, I wonder how, I always wondered, and he even said it himself, how would he deal with players like Deion Sanders, right? I don't know that it was his way or no way. And believe me, he used to tell players, even Herb Adderley, who came over from Green Bay and would want a Super Bowl. Okay, so he said, look, follow your keys. 2 steps this way, 2 steps that way. So they'd say to him, what if it doesn't work that way? I promise you, if you follow your keys, that's what you have to do. And there are some guys that, in other words, it's a system and a brilliant one, but he wanted it done one way, and I don't know how he would have done it today. I don't.
Exactly.
Because those kind of coaches have kind of passed.
I met
passed
the
on.
most legendary coach, and you guys know I know a lot of NFL guys, and the most legendary coach that I met, I'm going to test both your knowledge now. I'm not going to tell you what sport. I had an audience with Red Holzman one day. You know who Red Holzman
course
is?
I do, yeah.
New York Knicks coach, of course.
Yeah.
Legendary NBA coach. Well, after his career was over.
Beat our Lakers a couple
they
of
did.
times. So,
Right.
yeah.
Should have never beat him.
Right.
But I'm sorry.
I asked Coach Holzman one question one day. Could you coach today, Coach? And this was probably about a year before he passed away. And he said unequivocally, no, I could not coach these athletes today because it's a different breed now, especially in the NBA. The NBA, the players call the shots.
I sure do.
Like for Paul George to go to Oklahoma City and say, hey, I want to get traded, but not only do I want to get traded, I want to get traded to the LA Clippers. And he gets traded to the LA Clippers. That's not the professional sports leagues that I grew up with.
Right.
I remember Tom Seaver forcing the New York Mets hand in 1977. Tom Seaver's my all-time idol. And forcing a trade. And they traded him to the Cincinnati Reds only because if they didn't trade him, he was going to walk his free agent, year.
It just started by that
just
time.
started.
77.
Yep,
76,
just started.
77.
And he forced the Mets hand to trade him. But nowadays, Coach Holzman with these players, how many times do you see a coach coaching in a huddle in the NBA? If it's LeBron's team or Kyrie's team or any of these teams, they're calling the shots.
Right.
And so it's interesting how they follow up with, we started about how would Tom Landry do with today's athlete.
We'll take a quick break, come right back. One more segment, a short one, coming up on the Sports Desk.
Don't sacrifice quality.
Final segment here on the Sports Desk. Scott Galetti along with Ed Nunez, Dominic Bramante, the head coach of the Duke City Gladiators. Glad to have him here for the entire hour. Al Niawani, our fine director. Couple minutes, Coach. One thing that I wanted to bring up, you brought it up earlier, high school football. You have an opportunity to be one of the big commentators in town, and you kind of change hats. Usually coaches don't commentate until after they're done. You have an opportunity to do it in between seasons, and you do a great job. What's that been like for you?
Well, I appreciate you saying I do a nice job, considering I work with what's his name?
Need some
real
help?
deal.
Adam Deal, is that what it is?
The real deal.
Yeah, the real deal. Adam Deal,
Yeah.
considering working with him. You know, I love watching young people go out and perform in this game. I love I know how hard.
Well, when you
hard these
guys
young
were on the
people
field
work.
doing your stand-up, you could tell that you're into it. You're not faking it. I mean,
Right,
you
right.
love the game of football, and you love seeing the high school level.
Love
and
the
it
high
shows.
school. Love the high school players. Love the high school
You
coaches.
can't fake that. That's
I
one
love the
thing
high
that
school
the three of us
coaches.
all know. You can't
Right,
fake it.
right. I
You
love
either
high
like it
school
or you don't
coaches,
like
yeah.
it.
Love the sacrifices that the high school coaches make and their molding of these young men. And now it's turning into some young ladies also. Love the hard work of these young people who are putting on that hat, that helmet, those shoulder pads, getting out there in those 95-degree days and you know, trying to make a difference in this Spartan game. And so, yeah, there's nothing. I tell you, it's probably the most fun thing in the world to be able to sit back and enjoy that optic.
Earlier, you were joking around about recruiting and such. What do you say about the talent here in New Mexico? And you've seen guys, a couple of years ago, you did the championship game as we did with Jordan Bird.
Right.
As we're down to our final minute. Your thoughts
Right.
just on the talent?
I think that it's a work in progress. One of the things that as the coaching gets better, and we've got some great coaches here in New Mexico, that you know, you see not only the Jordan Birds, the Teton Salts of the world. This upcoming year, you got some great athletes. That O'Toole kid from La
Right.
Cueva, my
Right.
goodness. I saw him. I was at their practice the other day, and my goodness, I couldn't believe the size that this kid has put on since I saw him last season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know, and to see the attention that he's getting from all these Division 1A schools, I think that's an opportunity for some other kids.
Right.
To be able to go. I was even thinking of putting my kid over there just so he could get some
Right.
attention.
Your
from
kid's
these
pretty
schools.
good size,
He's
too,
going to be a good
so,
boy.
yeah.
He's going to be good. He's
Yeah.
got to get there first. He's a young guy, but you know, and hey, coming up on a sports desk, I did this for Alden because he's the best in the business. You know, and
Absolutely.
so you know.
Well, we got to do this again and
But I
talk about high
appreciate
school
you guys
stuff,
coming
so.
on, and we talk a whole hour about our product, the Duke
Mm-hmm.
City Gladiators. You guys do a great job on your show. It's been around for a long time. You know, next time, get me the memo so this way I can wear my shirt. You know, and I think Alden, you got to wear your shirt too. Yeah. I think.
Our thanks to Alden. He's trying to get us off the air here. Dominic, thank you so much.
you,
We'll
brother.
have you.
Thank you, Ed.
We
Coach.
need to talk high school football next
Definitely,
time, and
definitely.
hopefully we'll talk about your championship.
Let's
So
go.
best
Your
of luck
your
on
mouth to
Saturday.
God's ears. That's for sure.
He's Dominic Bramante and Nunez. Scott Galetti on